Sandhan. All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Good morning, friends. This is Dr. Himanshu Srivastav. I have come from Anand Arts College, Sardar Patel University. With me in the studio, we have Dr. Suresh Gadvi. He has also come from Anand Arts College, Sardar Patel University. Friends, we have come here to discuss a topic that is Greek tragedy and Shakespearean tragedy. What we will be discussing today is the ancient theatre, ancient Greek theatre. We'll be showing you some photographs also, and if time permits, a clip or two. What we'll be focusing apart from that is the characteristics of Greek tragedy, later on Shakespearean tragedy, the greatest Greek dramaticians as well as their dramas. Slide please. If we begin with drama, there are two types of drama, tragedy and comedy. Tragedy deals with the dark side of life and comedy deals with the light side of life. Tragedy, it can be said that into ancient era it was a serious drama, into medieval it was a story with unhappy close. Modern, it was a drama with unhappy close. Now if we start with the origin of tragedy, it is said that Dithyram, a choral song in honor of Dionysus, god Dionysus, Arian of Methymna in the 7th century, was the first to write a choral song. It was then later on practiced and was performed. Lessus of Hermione was the first to do it. It was done in the honor of god Dionysus. It was a worship. It was celebrated for god Dionysus, who was the god of wine. It was performed in a circular dancing place which is known as orchestra. I'll be showing you the picture of it. A chorus of men used to come dressed in goat skin because it was known as tragedia. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
Which is known as goat song. When was this tragedy performed? It was performed into city Dionysia, Athens, into end of March. This is what something that we have to take into consideration. Into rural Dionysia, into December, and into Lenia. It was into either January or early February. Into almost every Greek city, there were theatres, which nowadays we come to know as amphitheatres. Theatres may be huge, they may be small, and each theatre had specific parts. And usually they were located in the center of cities so that people can come around from all the places. Where and how were the dramas performed? It was into amphitheatre. The photograph may make things clear. They used to wear masks, which was one of the major features of Greek tragedy. These are some of the photographs of the masks that they used to wear. Let us have now a quick glimpse over how the structure of the theatre was. The left photo will show you the cartoon sketch of it, and the right the real picture of it. This was the stage, the different parts of stage, which I'll be discussing some photographs. This was one of the most important photographs because here in the background you can see the yellow building that that was used for the theatre artist to perform. They used to come, and it was known as skene. This is the sketch, and now we'll be focusing on which are the important parts of an amphitheatre. This is known as orchestra or dancing circle, served as a primary acting area. Here the actors used to come dance. Now let us focus on this portion, which is known as the scene building. It was consisted of a building behind the orchestra, probably used as a dressing room, later to be integrated into stage action. The third important area is this, which was known as periacte, which was a revolving triangular device with one scene painted on each side, so that to change the scene, you have to just change the shape of the triangle, and the scene used to be changed. Now these are certain photographs. Dionysus Theatre in Athens, the sketch of it. One of the most important and famous theatres of Epidaurus. Paragnon. There were three major Greek tragedy writers: Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Right, sir? Their major works are as described as it is on the right hand side of your screen. Aeschylus was born in 524 BC, as it is primarily accepted, and his major fame rests on Seven Against Thebes and Orestia. Sophocles is Oedipus the King and Antigone, and Euripides is Medea. Let us try to focus on these dramatists. They were all active in the 5th century. Each had a competition and each has won some or the other prizes, where Euripides was last to win minimum prizes. If I talk about Aeschylus, he has written 80 plays, and among all those 80 plays, his fame rests on Orestia. It was Aeschylus who added a second actor to plays. He was concerned basically with the problems of guilt and punishment over several generations. If you talk about Sophocles, he was not concerned about the problems of guilt and punishment the way Aeschylus was, but he dealt with a specific struggle of a strong individual against life. Oedipus Rex and Antigone are the major dramas of Sophocles. Let us concentrate on Euripides. Expresses weariness and disillusionment of war-torn years at the end of the 5th century. He was basically concerned for realism and a determination to expose social, political, and religious injustice. He believes in the existence of irrational forces, gods, but he does not deem them worthy of respect. His fame rests on Medea, as I've already mentioned. These are the parts of the tragedy which sir would be discussing into detail, but roughly a Greek tragedy was divided into these portions of prologue, which was consisted of first act, paradox, episodes, statisma, and exodus. Acts, choral odes, action after this. This was a pattern, a common pattern which all the three dramatists they followed. Now, for the further discussion about the definition of tragedy, Aristotle gave a definition of tragedy. I would request sir to continue. Sir.
Thank you, Himanshu Srivastav. Friends, Dr. Himanshu Srivastav threw some light on Greek theatre and the great writers of Greek tragedy. Now, I would like to begin my discussion with Aristotle. 5th century BC, as Dr. Himanshu Srivastav pointed out, was the golden period for the Greek tragedy. There were three major writers of tragedy in that particular century. First was Aeschylus, second was Sophocles, and the youngest of the three was Euripides. Now, it is said that they wrote many tragedies. For example, Sophocles is said to have written more than 120 tragedies, but only 7 of them have come down to us. So, they were the great tragedy writers of the 5th century BC in Greek. In the 4th century BC came Aristotle, and he wrote a treatise on poetry. The title of his treatise, as you all know, is the Poetics. It was written in 330 BC. Now, in writing this treatise, if we categorize the Poetics into 5 parts, we can see that the second part deals with tragedy. And in his theory of tragedy, Aristotle has based himself on these 3 great tragedians of the Greek drama. As Dr. Himanshu at the outset pointed out, from the earliest times, drama has been divided into 2 broad categories, tragedy and comedy. The atmosphere of tragedy is somber and serious. The atmosphere of a comedy is mirthful and light. Secondly, a tragedy aims at evoking the emotions of pity and awe, the emotions of pity and fear, while a comedy aims at evoking our laughter. So, tragedy particularly deals with human suffering, the suffering of a human being. Aristotle, as I pointed out in the beginning, based himself on the plays, on the tragedies written by the three great Greek masters. Let us begin with his definition of tragedy. In the 6th chapter of the Poetics, he defines tragedy like this: tragedy is an imitation of an action which is serious, complete in itself, and of a certain length. It is expressed in speech, made beautiful in different ways in different parts of the play. It is acted, not narrated, by exciting pity and fear. It gives a healthy relief to such emotions. This is the definition of tragedy given by Aristotle, and scholars after scholars have discussed it at length. Now let us discuss what Aristotle wants to say in this definition. Let us see it sentence after sentence. Next, tragedy, he says in the opening of his, or in the very beginning of his definition, tragedy is an imitation of an action. That means tragedy is an imitation. Aristotle says that imitation is a fundamental human instinct. Man imitates the objects of nature around him by practice or by habit. All arts, Aristotle says, are imitative. Tragedy is also an imitative art. Here, what has been imitated is action. By action, Aristotle means human action. The object of, so far as the object of imitation is concerned, it is human actions, right? The action should be serious. Here, the tragedy differs from comedy, which deals with non-serious actions, but the action in a tragedy should be serious. It should be complete. The action of a tragedy should be complete. Complete means it must have an organic quality, and it must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It must be complete in itself. All the parts must be related with each other. It must not be incomplete in any way. The language of a comedy, the language of tragedy should be embellished. So here it differs from epic, so far as the manner of imitation is concerned. Aristotle says that the language of a tragedy should be embellished. Embellished in the sense that dialogues in, verse in dialogues and songs in the choral part of the tragedy. It should be in the form of action and not narration. Here, tragedy differs from epic. In an epic, the things are narrated, but in a tragedy, it is in the form of, the action is, the presentation is in the form of action and not narration. Next. It should arouse pity and fear. Very important thing about the tragedy is this. When we watch a tragedy being enacted on the stage, it arouses in us the emotions of pity and fear. It is the function of tragedy. It should effect proper catharsis of the emotions of pity and fear. We will discuss it later, what Aristotle says or what Aristotle means when he uses this word catharsis. Next. Yes, according to Aristotle, there are 6 formative elements in a tragedy. The first is plot, and Aristotle believes, according to Aristotle, plot is the first thing in a tragedy. He says that a tragedy can be without characters. Plot can be without, tragedy may not have good characters. It is possible to have a tragedy without characters, but without plot, tragedy is not possible. The very existence of tragedy is not possible without the plot. So, plot, according to Aristotle, is the soul of a tragedy. The second is character. In the order of merit, character comes at the second place. Character deals with or shows us the moral purpose of the writer. and the character by showing what showing the things which a man accepts and the things that a man rejects, the things that he does, the things that he does not do.
The third is
Yes, the third is diction. Diction means language. Aristotle believes that the language of a tragedy should be embellished. He is in favor of metaphorical language. Language, it is through language that the thoughts and feelings of a character are expressed. They are, you see, translated through the thoughts and feelings of the character are translated through the thought. The language. The fourth is thought. Thought means what a person wants to do and what he does not want to do. So, it is the expression of what a man is, what the character is, what he wants to do. His thoughts give us the idea of what he wants to do. Next is spectacle or the scenic effect. And Aristotle says that a dramatist must not depend much on spectacle. He must depend on his own skill of writing a drama. He should depend on his art rather than on spectacle. Last in the list, the sixth element of tragedy or the sixth part of tragedy is song. Song is to be found in the choral part of the tragedy, and it beautifies the language, it beautifies and decorates the tragedy, and it also provides us with pleasure. Next. Yes. Then Aristotle discusses at length the plot in a tragedy. According to him, plot is the most important constituent of tragedy. It is the soul of tragedy. Aristotle talks of two types of plot. The first is simple plot, the second is complex plot. Simple